Hello and welcome to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. I'm Alex.
I'm Julio, and thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, head over to Apple Podcasts to subscribe and leave us a 5-star review. Help promote the algorithm and spread the word.
You can also find us on SoundCloud to subscribe and review. And don't forget to visit our main website, wearethecontrarians.com.
Follow us on Twitter at Contrarian Prime, and to like us on Facebook, visit facebook.com/Contrarian Prime.
And if you have the willpower to keep up with our pretentious ramblings, you can follow us individually at Contrarian Alex for myself and at Ovnio for Julio. That's OVNIO.
Now, time for the podcast. And we are recording Contrarians Corner for Blue Velvet.
Hello, and welcome back to the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong. My name is Alex, joined as always by my buddy Julio. Julio, this has been a real fucking asshole of a week. So,
Oh, you're telling me.
So naturally we go to a lighthearted movie that doesn't have you, reflect on yourself or question anything in general.
Or makes you maybe appreciate the fact that your life is nothing like a David Lynch movie.
I guess that's true. I could take away from that.
Do you think McLachlan voted for Biden or Bernie?
How do I not lose us listeners? It's like that Simpsons joke. I think he voted for Hillary Clinton.
I think he was too busy to go vote.
He definitely seems like a lefty, though, so I'm pretty sure he voted one of the B's. Or maybe the W.
You never know.
Anyway, yeah, the irony, I don't know if this is irony, of the situation is like, I postponed this episode a week because last week I was like sleep deprived and I had to get to work early. And I told Julio, I'm not in a mental state to watch a David Lynch movie. And this week's been even worse, but we needed to record to make sure we got it out on time. But it worked out for the better because we are here today to discuss our first David Lynch movie starring the aforementioned Kyle MacLachlan as well as Laura Dern and Isabel Rossellini. I saw some places had Isabel Rossellini as the top billing in this, which I thought was fascinating.
I'm not a Rossellini expert, but she always struck me as someone who was had a career in Europe and then came over to the States. So maybe that's kind of like what happened.
It could be. Yeah. Blue Velvet.
And introducing.
And introducing Dennis Hopper as Frank. Blue Velvet, the 1986 neo-noir mystery film.
Just call it a David Lynch film. Even back then, they would have known what they were getting into.
As I told you when we were recording this, one of the things, the highest points of adoration I have for David Lynch is like the, I guess, 4 decades worth of, 5 maybe, of people debating the themes and the meanings of his movies, what kind of movies they are and shit. Like that whole neo-noir mystery film. That's the type of thing. He's never said that probably in his life in relation to the movies. He's not going to tell you. And that's part of what makes his movies so endlessly fascinating. Not necessarily good.
Right.
Yeah.
IMDb should just have a Lynch tag. That's just all you use when you're listing one of his movies.
I would say you can call his fan base the Lynch mob, but in 2020, it's not even worth bothering. The Lynch pins is what
perfect.
You can call his fan base.
He would like that.
He would. It's not Blue Velvet. It might have been Twin Peaks. I just remember some talk show where like the interviewer was like, "You once said da-da-da of your work. Can you explain that?" And he just goes, "No." So, September 19th of 1986, Blue Velvet was released with a very modest budget of $6 million, which even in 1986 money, this movie looks pretty damn good for a $6 million budget.
Oh, that's the trick. You cast attractive people. Instantly adds $20 million to your budget.
It did, like the closing sequence, the shootout and everything. It did strike me like Threat Level Midnight, the shot of Toby's head blowing up, where like all of the budget went into like the brisket hanging out of Dennis Hopper's head. Jumping ahead of ourselves here. If this is your first time listening to the Contrarians, we do appreciate you guys tuning in. And to explain exactly what we do here, we like to say we rage against the Rotten Tomatoes machine. Find a movie that is highly rated, or that popular phrase certified fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, make a case for, maybe why it should be taken down a few pegs. Conversely, find a movie that's usually about 30% and below, those nasty, rotten movies, and make a case for the positive merit in them, being that Blue Velvet is at a lumbering 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. We'll be knocking this one down a few pegs. Fascinating that it is at 93%. I can't imagine how many of those are retroactive.
Well, like I was telling you, I was going through the quotes, and there's only 3 rotten quotes, and none of those are Ebert's. So let's say 4 negative reviews.
Well, also, it's kind of funny. Like, it's funny, as Martin Short would say, that 93% is not indicative of the initial response to this movie when it was released. It's if this movie was released today with the Rotten Tomatoes system, like, this would define a gray area movie.
Yes.
I think a lot of those are just people that have gone back now, and
that is an excellent point. The idea that there are some movies that have a very positive tomato meter score because they're the kind of movie that a film buff or that a critic will do like a retrospective review for, and then that goes back into the history of the movie, so now its percentage goes up. It's less,
and there's
likely...
been so many non-creative movies since 1986, like the Elizabethtown effect kicks in for these journalists, and they're just like...
Yeah, but the thing is, it's less likely for a critic to go and do a retrospective review of a movie that they don't like.
Yeah.
So when you see a rotten movie, most of those rotten reviews are coming real time, whereas when you see an older... fresh movie, a lot of those reviews came after the fact, decades later.
Yeah, like I can't guarantee that Modern Times would have been a 100% had the old RT been around in the 30s. Is that when that was released?
I think so, right before the talkies. Yeah, it would have been like, what is this bullshit?
Enough of the slapstick. Get to the plot.
Yeah. We can talk now. Why isn't he talking?
But being that it's 93%, so wildly heralded and beloved by film students around the globe, and I guess the
linchpins.
The linchpins. There you go. Okay, so what were bitches saying about this movie?
Okay, Chase Whale from chasewhale.com says, to an average moviegoer unaware of Lynch's work, the open scene might allude Blue Velvet is going to be a peaceful movie, but this is Lynch's world, so buckle up because shit is about to get weird.
Fair.
Sounds like a linchpin.
Yeah.
Norman Wilner from Now Toronto says, you can't laugh this movie off. It won't let you. Well, we're going to try, Norman. Ray Pride from New City says, gestures, ears, hands, bare necks, eyes, held still and fearful, just within his grasp. Not clutching, not crushing, not brushing, not bruising, just imminent.
The fuck is he talking about?
Right?
I'm pretty sure that's Garrett Delhunt. What's his Garrett Hedlund? His monologue in Llewyn Davis when he's talking about the show that he's on.
I think Ray was just sharing a mask with Dennis Hopper.
Yes, huffing in those fumes. When we get to the second half of the podcast, Real Talk, when we discuss how we actually feel about this, we have some trivia that we'll go through and just kind of random facts. And there's a really funny one about the gas that he inhales.
Fun fact that Ray Pride was Dennis Hopper's stunt double in Blue Velvet. Roger Hurlburt from South Florida Sun Sentinel says, Blue Velvet is a film for the aficionado. Pity the viewer who wanders into the movie unprepared.
I disagree with that.
Yeah, and it sounds a little elitist.
Yeah, it sounds like hella pretentious.
Yes. He is a linchpin.
Yes. He's in the Patreon tier Lynch Legends, where it's like the number one, like the most amount of money you can donate.
He's a president of the South Florida chapter. He has a t-shirt and the hat. Finally, Brian McKay from eFilmCritic.com says, it's Dennis Hopper sucking on an oxygen mask like Darth Vader in Snoop Dogg's Green Room. In other words, it's classic Hopper.
Okay.
That's what he took away. It's so funny.
Yeah, that's definitely retroactive.
It's the opposite of the guy that was saying
Snoop,
you can't laugh this off.
Snoop wasn't like a thing until he was a thing, but he wasn't like big and prevalent until the early 90s. And not to steal your gimmick, but I did have Peter Travers, our
guy.
I think it's
ubiquitous
is the word I'm looking for, because he's always not far behind with our reviews here.
I think other than Roger Ebert, Peter Travers is probably the one critic that we call out.
Yeah. And more often than not, I agree with him. Absolutely do not agree with what he said about Blue Velvet and that it was the best film of the 80s and an American masterpiece. I mean,
they can't all be home runs.
No.
He grabbed the mask after, just puffed.
He just had like his strand of blue, like crushed blue velvet, like from I don't know, his grandma's fucking bathrobe or something. Just rubbing it against his face. Oh boy. Blue Velvet is the story of college student Jeffrey Beaumont, played by Kyle MacLachlan, who I'm not really sure has ever been on the podcast or ever will.
I don't think he's even been mentioned on the podcast.
During one of my many Sex and the City ramblings, I'm sure I talked about how good he is on that show.
Is he a good guy or a bad guy? Is he a good boyfriend?
He's Kyle MacLachlan.
So, I mean,
he's
hot. That's really what
he's hot and he's rich and he's very well mannered. Trey is his name, and Charlotte dates him, and they're engaged to get married. But there's just, I can't go too deep into detail without spoiling it for our faithful listeners. It's one of the better story arcs of the whole series.
Well, I can tell you that the average listener, or the average, I guess, Sex and the City viewer, like myself, which means people that have seen the movies but not the show, know that Kyle MacLachlan is not in the movies. So we know that it doesn't work out.
It does not. But he's great, and there's one episode where he's like just playing tennis by himself. He's just hitting, like he has the machine shooting the balls at him. It's like late at night, and he's shirtless, and he's just wearing like athletic shorts, and he's like sweating, so the light's like glistening off him in the moonlight. It's very Lynchian. I'm surprised he might have ghost directed that episode. But he returns home to Lubberton, North Carolina, after his dad suffers a near fatal stroke. As that review mentioned, the opening is very colorful and full of life, and like you can feel the summertime in the air. And then this just randomly old dude falls over.
Lynch has to be weird no matter what. Even to depict the stroke at the beginning of the movie, the guy grabs the back of his neck, which is something I've never seen in a movie to depict the stroke. Usually, they go with the left arm,
or the amour, just kind of stare off.
Yes,
blankly.
But no, Lynch has to make a show on it. It has to be different.
Slow motion.
It's a Lynchian stroke. Then the dog starts playing with the guy's testicles.
Not the testicles.
He's on his crotch.
Yeah, but he's playing with the hose because the hose is still going off.
But he's on the
I guess
testicles.
Could that be like a metaphor of some sort?
Sparky.
It is Sparky.
Making his triumphant return after just one episode.
Yeah, back-to-back episodes. That might be a new record when we're not, in terms of not doing like a specific series focused on someone. We've definitely never timed a dog appearing in back-to-back movies.
Coming soon this summer with Sparky.
God bless. It's a cute dog. Walking home from the hospital, he cuts through a vacant lot and discovers a severed ear. Anyone that's seen this movie, I'm pretty sure the first thing they think of is that ear.
That's what happened to me.
Yeah. I mean, that should tell you what we're dealing with here is that the first thing that comes to mind of anyone is no acting performance or any like shot in the movie. It's just a severed appendage.
It's like, the movie with the ear. Yes.
Exactly.
Following instantly by, the movie with Dennis Hopper.
I was very sensitive to the scene because of the current events with the coronavirus and whatnot. The fact that he just with bare hands picks this ear up and then puts it into just a paper bag and walks through town with it like dee 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 dee.
If Lynch had the opportunity of remake and re-release the movie today, do you think that he would make it even more of a point that he's grabbing it with his bare hands? Just a close-up.
That, and he would lick his fingers after he puts it in the bag.
Licks the ear to make sure it's a real ear.
Or he pulls out like that super frou-frou hand sanitizer that me and Eddie were always a big fan of, like the hibiscus with lemon.
Yes.
Just douses his hands in him and kind of smells them as he goes away. He takes the ear to police detective John Williams, not the acclaimed conductor.
No. Now, I don't know if John Williams always acts this way. This is the first time I've seen it in a movie that I can tell. But it's almost like the fact that he shares a name with somebody who's just so much further ahead in their career. It's almost like he doesn't care.
George Dickerson is the actor who plays Detective John Williams.
Police officer John Williams
was not getting paid by the hour here.
He's just, I mean, there's a lot of underreaction.
Based on his performance, he may have not been getting paid at all.
Yes. He was the guy he was the teamster that drove the truck. And then when the actor failed, they just got him. I was like, can you please do us a solid.
Yeah, when who would have been something back then? When Corey Haim, couldn't make it to set, they were like, "Hey, can you wear this suit?"
But yeah, it's almost like he's at the table reading.
Yes.
And everybody else is shooting the movie for real.
Like, all he's missing is reading glasses on the tip of his nose, just looking over him at Kyle MacLachlan the entire movie. He becomes reacquainted with the detective's daughter, Sandy. I guess they went to high school together or some shit.
Yeah.
Sandy, of course, played by...
I mean, they're 10 years apart, but...
Well, IRL,
Yes.
Sandy, of course, played by perennial Lynch actress and America's sweetheart, Miss Laura Dern, recent Academy Award winner.
Now, Oscar winner, wouldn't have pegged her as a future Oscar winner just going from her performance in this movie.
Oh, no.
Not her fault in this case, especially because we know, unlike the guy playing the sheriff, we've seen what Laura Dern can do.
Oh, Jeffrey.
Yeah, God. That was just Lynch fucking with you. Again, the entirety, he's the Andy Kaufman of directors. I think he just likes fucking with your head. And so he casts a hugely talented actress and then gives her nothing to work with.
Saddles her with like bad lines and just like
Can you just look
facial
pretty?
acting that would make Jim Carrey jealous.
Anytime that she asks, but why? He'll be like, because
I said so.
I'm David Lynch. That's why.
I'll be David Lynch. You be Laura Dern. How about that? After eavesdropping on her father discussing the ear with a colleague, Sandy tells Jeffrey that it somehow relates back to a lounge singer named Dorothy Valens. Intrigued, Jeffrey enters Dorothy's apartment by posing as an exterminator and steals a spare key while she's distracted by a man in a distinctive yellow sports coat.
Now, I know that this was the 80s, but did you think that this was a little too easy for him to just get into a strange woman's apartment pretending to be a...
And the key's not even really hidden. He
Right.
just opens a cabinet, it's just dangling down like a fucking wind chime.
And I always... This is why I hate David Lynch, because I find myself second guessing what I'm thinking on every scene. Because at first I'm like...
So he's already won.
Yes. I know, he's laughing because that was the point, right? I think this is too easy. And then I think, oh no, but that's what he's saying. He's saying that it's too easy because it's about to get really bad.
Mm-hmm.
Every time. This is too sick. Oh, but that's what Lynch wants me to think. Because it's supposed to be sick in contrast with everything else that happens. So it's too much. I don't need that. Maybe if it was a short film, I could put up with that. But in a feature film, 2 hours of constantly second guessing what I'm thinking about the movie is just too much.
So he takes the spare key. They go out to see her perform her little lounge thing. God, what? I don't even know if That Thing You Do played That Thing You Do as many times as this movie plays Blue Velvet.
Yes, they had the rights to a very limited assortment of songs, so they had to just play them over and over. They're like, we can play Blue Velvet every time we need a song, except for whenever we need is it Roy Orbison, the one that Hopper sings?
Oh yeah,
or rather speaks over.
Yeah.
Later, and then whatever Dean Stockwell is miming.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the 3 songs in the movie. That's it.
It was basically like, we can have an Almost Famous-esque lineup of a soundtrack, or we can just use the song Blue Velvet 9 times throughout
and then
the
we
movie.
can afford Dennis Hopper.
So they see her, and then they go back to her apartment, and, it's as good as time as any to bring this up, because I have it written several times throughout my notes.
What's going on?
No. Why isn't he just taking care of his dad? The whole reason he came back home was his dad was like, fucked up by the stroke. He has like one of those old school halos on his head, like screwed into his head. And, he has one of the smokers things in his throat to help him speak. And he's in bad shape, man.
It's the mid 80s too. Technology wasn't up there to where you could just he'll be okay in the hospital. I mean, you needed to keep track of that shit.
And but instead he gets on like this Hardy Boys adventure where he's like, oh, an ear, I gotta get to the bottom of it.
Later in the movie,
let me fuck you.
Yes, the long lost X-rated Hardy Boys adventure, the one with the naked French lady.
I'm just seeing the illustrated cover, Hardy Boys, and then in quote like the colon, and then the quote is "Baby wants to fuck."
This is a literally
like a really evil animated like Dennis Hopper with the gas mask on.
Yeah, it's later in the movie, much later, we finally see him visiting his dad again, and I had already forgotten that the father was a plot point. It was just like, oh, that's right, his dad was in the hospital.
It becomes such a non-factor, like, there's so many non sequitur shots of it that it's like, is this just Lynch being weird? Like, there's just some old dude in a hospital, but oh, that's his dad. You can.
Yes. Speaking of Kyle MacLachlan, like now that we're settled into the plot, pretty much by now, right? You have the ear, and we're about to hit the introduction of Dennis Hopper pretty soon, and that's when things get weird. But
Well,
to say the least,
I was gonna say that's taxing the definition of the word weird.
The idea, the big idea behind Blue Velvet and David Lynch's take on it and all that stuff is just to contrast, I guess, average, everyday Americana with the shit that lives underneath. Right from the opening shots where you see the bugs under the grass after, everybody's happy and, having the stroke and whatever. So, again, the idea is that
I think a movie called What Lies Beneath did a lot better job.
Hey, a movie called American Beauty asked you to look closer, and turns out that Kevin Spacey was not as happy as you thought. And then it became meta. But so for this to work, Kyle MacLachlan has to be the average guy, which he is not. No. And that's probably my main problem with this movie. Kyle MacLachlan is as weird as David Lynch and the movies of David Lynch in the sense that he goes looking for trouble. The average person doesn't. The average person would just go out on a date with Laura Dern. But when Laura Dern is there flirting with him, he's just like, so what did you hear about the ear?
Yeah, and it's so funny. Like, the character of Jeffrey is written to be very charming. And David Lynch's interpretation of what charming is him being like, talking about school and, how's your family? Hey, have you seen my chicken walk? And then he walks really weird.
That's flirting.
I'm curious I'm curious what, however old David Lynch is. So in the 50s and 60s, what he thought flirting was.
But you can tell, right? They're kindred spirits and they're just regular spirits. Laura Dern has worked with Lynch before, but she managed to break out into just average, mainstream movies.
Yeah.
And did great. MacLachlan.
Fucking Star Wars.
Yes. MacLachlan, he's too good for mainstream. He's just going to stay with the really oddball filmmaking. So that's why he works so well with Lynch.
His career is basically David Lynch projects, Sex and the City, and Portlandia.
And then he looks at you in the eye. He's like, define me. I dare you.
So breaks into Dorothy's apartment looking for clues. I don't know, red herrings, whatever. Again, we're dealing with a really obscure version of the Hardy Boys here. The signal to get the fuck out of there is Laura Dern's going to honk 3 times. Of course, this fucking, what's the word I'm looking? The temerity of, and just the, the egotism of man here when it comes to Jeffrey. He's like, well, I'll just go ahead and take a piss. So
he needs to mark his territory.
Yeah, exactly.
That he's in a new spot.
So he flushes the toilet. At the same time, she's honking the horn. He's walking. He hears the key in the door, so he runs and hides in the closet. Dorothy comes in and basically just acts like me when I know I'm home alone. Semi-stripping, taking off my wig, just kind of walking around half nude, laying on the couch, then getting down on the floor and all fours looking at a picture. It's
just like you.
It's pretty standard stuff. The only thing that's missing is ordering a big box meal from Pizza Hut. And meanwhile he's watching from the closet the entire time. Clearly having never done this before, he makes, several rattles and noises. I don't know if it's the American Pie 2, the boner hitting the edge of the closet. But she smartens up to it, goes and grabs a knife, opens the closet, is holding him at knife point. And
the movie turns into a porno for about 5 minutes.
I was about to say, it's a David Lynch movie. This is the type of thing you would see in a porn of what are you doing in here? Take off your clothes. And it's, you go
at knife point.
If this is your first time watching it, you go from oh, this is tense, to what the fuck, McClanahan ass.
Yes.
Right in my face. Trying to be as, respectful of this as possible because we always describe things with the utmost respect and class on here. She just forces him to strip and then just kind of gives it a little lick and a little tug, and then she takes him to her couch. They start making out, and then
the framing is key here because So McLachlan is naked by
Yeah.
now. But
Oh, you get a full hog shot of him in this movie.
do you?
He like when he's running to scramble back in, it's just like flapping in the breeze.
I didn't see the flap. I saw the pubes.
Oh, okay.
And then
He had
I
the-
blushed and I looked away. I guess I missed
What is it? The merkin. The only reason I know that term is Gina Gershon talked about the merkin she picked out for. You've seen Killer Joe, right?
Yes.
You remember like the first shot of that movie is her vagina
Gershon's vagina?
when like who's the
Clearly, the fried chicken scene later in the movie just
Jesus
captivated me so much. That
Is it Emil Hirsch? Is that who's
I
in
think
it?
so, yeah.
Like he knocks on the trailer door and she swings it open and it's just a shot of her from like the waist down.
I remember now.
It was
Yes.
like really her vagina, but she had a merkin that she wore, and I had to look up what that meant. And she said she named it Big Bertha, which I just like. That's the type of shit that's so foul it just sticks with you forever. Completely unrelated, but we'll tie together in real talk. Gina Gershon auditioned or was pegged to play a role in Friday the 13th Part 5. And the reason I know that will come back into play in plugs this episode.
Wow. That's a Lynchian knot that you just tied there.
No, if it was Lynchian, I mean,
You be telling to me naked.
yes, and you would just be looking at me, and there would be like a bee on your eyeball. So anyway, she is having her way with Jeffrey, and he is clearly not against the idea of this. But she does hear, someone coming down the hall, so we know some sort of business is about to pick up because she tells him, get back in the closet, and he's getting dressed and whatnot. And then enter Contrarian's favorite, not for this movie, but the man, the myth, the legend, Dennis Hopper enters the fray. Frank, which
He comes in a bad mood.
he has played Frank, I think I read on his credits 8 or 9 times. Like he's been a Frank in something. Like
He's like the Nero playing
non-canonical. Like he's just Frank, and
You think that's his thing? He comes in and he's like, "Can I be named Frank?"
he comes in, he's swearing. I don't know. Does anyone else in this movie curse besides him?
If they do, they pale in comparison because he's wearing the swearing pants.
Fuck is his comma in this movie. And he's ranting and raving and yelling to the heavens, and then basically sits down. Jesus, my note said Dennis Hopper brings the party.
He ruins the porno. That's what he does. Because you're kind of into it. It seems kind of once you understand that this is David Lynch's sick fantasy, you're like, all right, let's see what a porno looks like through the lenses of David Lynch.
It's clearly,
and I guess what that does is like it's not sexy at all.
No, because Hopper comes in. He has a gas mask type thing, like an oxygen mask, and he begins huffing from it, and he is just barking orders at Dorothy here about spread your legs and like. Having seen this before, it's still weird, but it doesn't hit you. This is one of those scenes. The first time you see it, it's so uncomfortable.
Right, because you don't know it's Lynch, so you don't know how far it's gonna go.
And you also don't like with Lynch, like we talked about at the very beginning. You have so many questions that are never answered.
Yes, you're constantly second guessing. Is this real?
And basically, like real talk, Contrarians Corner, whatever. I don't really want to go into detail about what happens here because there's no way to like respectfully or delicately describe it. But essentially, the way I heard it referred to in so many reviews and like notes about the movie was ritualistic rape, which I didn't get a rape thing from it because she was clearly like consenting. At the same time, it was some really fucked up, brutal shit that was going on.
No, but once the movie keeps going, you realize that she's not really consenting. He is
in the scene is what I mean.
Right,
like,
right.
You find out down the line that this is basically certainly not her penance, but like her perceived debt that she owes to him to keep her husband and her son alive.
Right. Yeah. I think that when you're watching it the first time, you don't know if it's just that,
Some
this is how they
freaky
roll.
shit that
right. This is how they go. He calls her mommy. He keeps his pants on the entire time.
That weird thing about like he tells her don't look at me, but she consistently does, so she gets hit in return, and it's a very off-putting. Fails to describe this. It's
just
so far removed from the center.
Well, here's the problem that you could make an entire movie exploring this sort of relationship, whether it's consensual or not. And that's enough to fill up a full movie. 3 movies, if you look at the 50 Shades trilogy.
Oh,
S&M, sexual practices. You can't just limit that to your one what the fuck scene in the movie.
no.
Right? But Lynch is not interested in really exploring it. He just wants shock value out of it. So that's really why the scene is there, not because he actually has anything to say about sexuality or even male dominance. No, it's just because what would be more what
Why
the fuck
not?
than that? Exactly. We keep cutting to Kyle MacLachlan's close-ups just being really weirded out inside the closet, and that's really the audience.
Yeah.
As you're watching, you're also, what did I get myself into?
He like bolts right afterwards, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't stay.
That's the whole point of the scene. It's like we've talked about it now for maybe 5 minutes, but the scene itself is like maybe 120 seconds. It just kind of all happens.
It's just concentrated mindfuck.
Yeah. It's just Lynch. It's basically like I wish there was a picture-in-picture of just his face. Not like reacting, but just looking at you, the audience, because that's basically what this scene is.
Directing Hopper and just going, weirder, louder.
Hopper takes off. Jeffrey returns back to Dorothy to like basically console her and pick her up and try to help her.
Man, seduce her, because why not?
Yeah,
He was just assaulted. And
At this point, he carries her over to the couch. She asks him, hold me, like, do you like me? That type of stuff. And then she's asking him to hit her. And that's, all this voyeuristic activity. That's where McClanahan draws the line.
I broke into your apartment. I watch you.
I was about to say he didn't come out and interfere, but at the same time, at this point, much like the audience, he didn't realize that this wasn't like part of a much worse thing.
That's true. I think that the entire time that I was watching the movie today, I carried with me the bitterness of knowing where this was leading. You're right. I mean, what is it like to watch this for the first time? I think that when I watched it for the first time, I already knew what was coming in a way. Well, I knew that Dennis Hopper was a bad dude.
Yeah.
So I never even watched it thinking that it was consensual at all.
That's one of the reasons I've never been able to take, amongst a myriad of other things, one of the reasons I've never been able to take the second Texas Chainsaw Massacre too seriously, because Dennis Hopper's the good guy. And it's like, who believes Dennis Hopper's the good guy? It's like Alan Rickman being the good guy in something. Keep in mind, I haven't seen any of the Harry Potter movies, so I don't know how that pays off.
I kept my mouth shut about Harry Potter. See, it's been so long since I saw it, but I could have also been simply conditioned by the fact that he hits a woman, and that automatically,
as it should,
right. But there is such a thing as consensual
S&M.
What S&M? So I don't know. I was too young and naive about the world when I watched it to even consider that as a reading.
Speaking of the world in general and naivety, Jeffrey's pretty much troubled by this. The next time he sees Laura Dern, he just starts his soliloquy about what he's seen with "It's a Strange World," and I mean that's like the obituary for David Lynch. The headline: "It's a Strange World. Lynch dead at 137." He's basically realizing that there's more to this than he understands. He kind of fills in Laura Dern on what his plan is, but he ends up staking out Frank and is there, and he sees all this bad shit happen, what kind of a bad dude he is. We never really find out what his ties or relations are, but we do find out that this mysterious yellow man is working with Frank. But I don't know if he's in the mob or what it is, but it brutally kills some people.
I don't think Lynch knows. All that backstory is just sort of to put you at ease that he is a bad guy.
Yeah.
So he can move on with the story. The rest of the movie doesn't work if you don't really know for sure that Dennis Hopper is...
Lynch filmed up to that weird sex scene, and then the studio's like, he's the bad guy, right? And Lynch is like, fuck!
Test audiences were not sure, so they had to add some more stuff. When McLachlan is telling Laura Dern about this, she launches into a soliloquy of her own that is completely disconnected from the movie. Anything that has happened, anything that will happen.
Is this about her dream?
Yeah.
Okay.
When she just goes on, she dreamt about robins.
When the robins bring the light, like the world's all fucked up, but like this gaggle of robins brings light back to the world or some shit.
Yeah, so I'm guessing the point is that she is so far removed from the grittiness of the real world that now Kyle MacLachlan has experienced that she can't even understand really how fucked up it is, everything that he's telling her. Instead, she's just thinking, well, I dreamt of a house with a white fence and we're going to have kids running around. It's sort of her Oscar clip, but it's also kind of underlined by the fact that she is also not a real human being. Just like Kyle MacLachlan is not your average guy, she went too far in the other direction. It's not her fault. She's a great actress. I think Lynch just told her, hey, dumb it down.
It's like he just wants to consistently give her these scenes to remind you she's the young, naive one in the story.
Yes. She's the one that doesn't know how fucked up America
She was
really
like
is.
2 steps away from having like an oversized lollipop in her hand the whole time.
Her big teddy bear.
Yeah. Hair and pigtails and I don't know. Bringing it back to Corey Haim and Corey Feldman. She's got a Corey and Corey poster on her wall. Through this, he can't shake Dorothy. I mean, I do think he really does care for Sandy, Laura Dern's character, but Dorothy weighs heavy on his mind, so he goes back to see her. They end up engaging in the... they become the beast with 2 backs, I should say.
They start dating, basically.
Yeah, and...
There's like a montage of revolving doors. It just... MacLachlan... She constantly opening the door, MacLachlan walking in, taking his shirt off. She kisses him on the cheek.
It's all the same day. He just goes home and changes just because like his clothes get torn up in the fracas. Yeah, just more Lynchian shit. Their sex scene.
She asks him to hit her.
Yeah, and eventually he acquiesces. Like
Slow motion. The roaring of a tiger in the background.
Pretty brutally. And then we get like a shot of her, a close-up of her mouth busted.
And because it's Lynch, you just don't know if it's supposed to be sexy or scary or disturbing or funny.
I don't know if I've used the word off-putting already probably a baker's dozen times, but that it's not any of the things you listed. It's just off-putting. It's why am I watching this?
It's Lynch.
It's Lynch. But those Lynch pins, man, they were going nuts.
But that's the thing. Much like the Dennis Hopper scene, it's almost there, for shock value.
Yes.
Because it doesn't end up doing much for Kyle MacLachlan's character. It's so superficial. I would think that everything he experiences in this movie would fundamentally change who he is. But not really. Throughout the entire movie, I mean, he gets beaten up, he has weird sex, but in the end, we arrive to a place where he's the same person that he was at the beginning.
Yeah. I guess, if anything, what the takeaway is supposed to be is that he does care for her so much that he'll hit her. That's that David Lynch mentality right there.
Or does he? That's the David Lynch question. Every scene, every conclusion you take out of a scene is punctuated by, or does it?
It's every David Lynch like theme, overriding theme, is a definitive statement followed by a question mark.
Maybe.
Yeah. After one of their many afternoon sessions, he comes out into the hallway. He's getting ready to leave. Frank shows up with his ragtag team of like every bad guy from Streets of Rage. They're just kind of hanging out in the background. Frank says, let's go for a ride. They end up going to a brothel. Jeffrey's just being absolutely tormented, physically and mentally abused. This is part 1 of a 2-part series of the lip syncing to Roy Orbison's In Dreams. This is where he has Ben, the man who runs the brothel.
Oh, I didn't realize it was the same song.
Mm-hmm.
Huh.
Yeah.
I think I was too distracted by Dean Stockwell's...
Dean Stockwell, there you go.
Yeah, Dean Stockwell's attempt at matching Dennis Hopper in the
weirdness department.
The weird-ass portrayal of his character.
And he's got that white powder on his face that's never really explained. But yeah, he has like a shop light that you would use to work on a car. You'd usually hang it from the roof of the hood of your car, when you're working on the engine. And he's just kind of holding it in his face. That could not have been comfortable. Because those fuckers put off heat, man.
It's one of those things where you wonder, was it his idea or was it Lynch's idea? Because I think if you're one of those actors that likes to play, working for Lynch is your dream come true because anything you bring to the table is going to make it into the movie.
It's a shame Robin Williams never worked with David Lynch.
Could he have out-Lynched Lynch?
Probably.
Where Lynch would have been like, that's enough.
David Lynch, let's bring it back a step. Yeah, and then this is like a preamble to Shame, the scene of Fassbender just watching Carey Mulligan sing New York, New York, where he's just kind of looking on and his eyes are welling up. The only difference being, of course, Dennis Hopper didn't drop the one single tear down his cheek.
Because he knows how to restrain himself. He's an actor's actor. He doesn't go for the cheap emotion of the single tear.
Yeah.
Instead, he sings along, but he just mouths the words.
So this causes Frank to just yell at the top of his lungs about fucking. And
he quotes Jay from Clerks 1 or 2. Where he goes, I'll fuck anything that moves.
So then they take off. They're going like over 100 down the freeway. There's at least 6 people in this small car that's not equipped to seat more than maybe 5.
Peruvian flashbacks all over every time they got into that car.
He's obviously really concerned about what's going on, and then all it takes is a shot of Dorothy just kind of looking back and concerned at him for Dennis Hopper to just flip out. He pulls over off the side of the road. He starts huffing off his gas mask, tries to kind of molest Dorothy, to which Jeffrey stands up for him, punches Dennis Hopper in the face.
He's being held by 3 guys in the back seat, and yet somehow
is able to get a right cross off.
Yeah, it's not even a weak punch. He goes all the way through.
The way it's shot too looks so hokey, though. It looks like one of those boxing gloves. Boing! It just comes out at him. So they pull him out of the car. Dennis Hopper puts lipstick on and then begins kissing him. Yes. David Lynch.
Yes.
Best picture. Blue Velvet. Kisses him, plays that Roy Orbison song again, and then gives him a proper shellacking, says hold him tight, and just starts beating the shit out of him, and basically beats him unconscious and leaves him.
As much sense as the movie has made before, which is very little, this is where it really lost me as far as the plot goes, because there's no reason for Hopper not to kill McLaughlin then. It's not just that in his mind, McLaughlin has disrespected him and his woman hostage or whatever. He's also a witness.
Yeah.
He's seeing his face. He's in the face of his entire, was it Streets of Rage posse. He could identify him. He could go to the cops, which is something he should have done a long time ago anyway. And yet he just leaves him there.
I say Streets of Rage, a much more time appropriate reference would be Final Fight. They were
they're contemporaries, aren't they?
Final Fight was 80s. I guess you're right. Streets of Rage, I think, was very early 90s.
I mean, if you said like Golden Axe, I would have stopped you. So no, too far back.
We've gone too far. We're not watching Conan the Barbarian.
Dennis Hopper and his Vikings just walking down the street.
In 1987, North Dakota
Lynch.
or whatever the fuck they were. That's going to bother me now. Where were they? Is it North Dakota? Was that right?
No, North Carolina.
North Carolina. Same thing, just a lot colder. So the next morning is a sobering one for Kyle MacLanahan, to say the very least.
You keep calling him Kyle MacLanahan. I'm pretty sure it's Kyle MacLachlan. One of us is wrong.
It's not you. I don't know where I got Kyle MacLanahan. It's not going to change though. It's embedded into my lexicon.
That was his name in Sex and the City.
It was Trey, but
Trey MacLanahan.
There you go. Kyle MacLachlan, excuse me. So, a sobering morning for Jeffrey indeed. He kind of wakes up from this near-death ass whipping, goes back to his apartment or home or wherever the fuck he's staying. It's his home.
His parents'
Yeah, his
home.
mom and his aunt are there. And he's just like reliving all of these just vicious sex sessions he's had with Dorothy
And with Hopper, if you count the smooch.
Yes. And I don't know if you can count this as an Oscar clip, because you couldn't show this on broadcast television then or now.
No, you just have to show him crying. That's the only broadcast safe part of that sequence.
So he realizes that he can no longer basically follow this trail. He needs to bring in actual shoot law enforcement.
The most sensible thing he's done in the movie.
By far. So he goes and brings the case to Detective Williams. And he postulates his theory that Dorothy, her husband and son, are being held hostage. That's why she has agreed to this. When
they were at Dean Stockwell's, he hears, or Hopper says, let her see her kid. So that's where they're keeping the kid. We're
reminded he has a dad, because we just get like a random, like a fade transition into him with his dad in the hospital. It's date night with Sandy and Jeffrey. They go out, have a really nice date, do some dancing. It's like, it feels like Pleasantville, this scene.
Yes. They had before they start fully open mouth kissing, they they're slow dancing. And my thought was, before they started making out heavily, my thought was, well, after you've gone through everything that he's gone through, this doesn't cut it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that that's what the movie was going to show me, that now he's attempting to have a relationship, a normal relationship with Laura Dern, but he's not going to be able to do it because he's just seen too much. He's kissed Dennis Hopper. There's no going back. But no. Instead,
they comically suck face with each other.
Yes, while everybody watches and applauds. And
the light intensifies. And
yeah, Laura Dern has 3 female friends that never get a line, but they're always looking from the corner, like giggling and just pointing at Kyle MacLachlan. Isn't he dreamy?
It's her friends Marty, Rizzo.
No, there's no Rizzo there.
For as much as I love Grease, I am completely blank. I know Marty because she's the hot one, and the other ones, I don't know.
What's the hair saloon dropout? Not hair salon.
Beauty school dropout.
Beauty school.
Hair saloon dropout is
it's Grease too.
That's Oil Slick. That's the hit song from that movie. Anyway, so they take off after a good night. They say I love you to one another. It's a magical evening. They're on their drive home. There's a car trying to run them off the road. They get to Jeffrey's house. Mike, who is the scorned ex-lover of Sandy, gets out of the car, and he's got his crew, fucking Jughead and everyone from Riverdale with him. And they're ready to beat his ass when, you think you're dealing with a normal movie, and then again, Lynch just throws that Sidewinder at you as they're at Jeffrey's house, and then a very beat up, bruised, and battered
and
naked Dorothy just stumbles in. And then Mike at first looks at her, is that your mom? And then looks back at her, is like, oh shit, we got to get the fuck out of here.
Guys, it's not his mom. Better leave.
It's a very beat up nude woman.
It's so weird. It was never explained in the movie how she made it to his house, how she ended up in the situation. You asked me as we were watching it, and I foolishly said, I'm sure they explain it. No. In fact, this is
Speaking of the naivety of the man.
Yes, I became a member of that community. It'll turn out okay.
For one moment, you were Laura Dern in this movie.
We're in the hands of an assured storyteller that knows how to tell a story.
So they take her to Sandy's home, the Williams residence, because her dad will be there. They can get an ambulance there quick, all that good stuff. She is just inconsolable, but also just fawning over Jeffrey. And doesn't she even say my secret lover?
Yes, she does. It's so over the top. At the same time, and I hate it for this, it's the best scene in the movie in my mind. And I hate that the movie doesn't follow through, because this is where it comes to a head. And I laughed while we were watching it. And I told you, I felt bad. I felt the need to explain to you, because I was laughing at something that's pretty horrifying, because the woman is naked and she's been through a lot. And obviously she's clinging to MacLachlan because he's sanity in a way. But what made me laugh was that Sandy's mom is there, and she is not acting like anybody would if you brought a naked, bruised woman.
She's so calm and matter of fact.
Yeah, she's way too chill. It's almost scary, because you think that she's part of the Dennis Hopper's gang. She's about to call them instead of calling the cops. But then what really makes this great, it gave me a window into what I thought the movie was really going to be about for the last 30 minutes or so, and it isn't. Which is the idea that Kyle MacLachlan has been living 2 lives. The squeaky clean life with Laura Dern, where he is the dreamy boyfriend that has come back from college to take care of his dad, and he's showing a healthy interest in a mystery that's nowhere near as fucked up as anybody else knows. But then on the other side, he's become the secret lover of Isabella Rossellini, and he's seen some shit, and it's a darker, crazier, disturbing side of his life. And in this scene, they come together. And the best piece of acting here, overshadowed by Dennis Hopper's crying and singing and yelling in every other scene, is Laura Dern's face when she realizes that Kyle MacLachlan has been sleeping with Isabella Rossellini.
Oh, she's terrified.
It gets maybe 4 seconds of screen time. But to me, that was like, oh, wow, shit hit the fan. Now we're about to get interesting, because it
looks like Donald Sutherland in Invasion of the Body Snatchers, that close-up of his face.
Oh! And McLaughlin does well too, because he's trying to. He knows he can't explain it.
It's
the
awesome.
jig is up.
It's awesome too, because David Lynch makes sure to like shoehorn in his thoughts of how catty women are with each other, because there's like that shot of Isabel Rossellini like looking over at Laura Dern and just be like, "That's right."
He's hugging me, not you.
But McClanahan is like, oh god, it's so perfect. It's me at 19. Like he's got his arms around this nude woman in front of him while he's looking at Laura Dern, like, "I'm sorry."
It's not what you think it is. That movie. So the movie peaks there, and the last 30 minutes of the movie should have been something completely different. It should have followed through on this, but Lynch had other things in his mind. He said, "No, let's see how much weirder we can get."
So they take her to the hospital. She, I think the last line she has in the movie is "Hold me, I'm falling," when she's getting loaded
She's in
in
the
stretcher.
Yeah. I honestly thought, once I realized what was happening in the last part of the movie, that was the last, that we weren't going to see her again.
Her original last line was a deleted scene where she's in the hospital and she looks in the mirror and says, "It looks like I still have some healing to do." So she's out. She's out of the situation right now. But that's not to say there isn't still a situation, because Detective Williams is following through. There's going to be the big showdown. He's going to Frank's compound, and also the Man in Yellow. He knows that we find out the Man in Yellow is Detective Williams' partner. I think Tom is his name. So Jeffrey ends up going back to Dorothy's place. Not entirely sure why.
Because David Lynch.
Yeah. God, I would love to be in like a production meeting with him, but why? Fucking because. So he shows back up at Dorothy's apartment, and there is a scene of absolute violence there. It's really gross. For as many horror movies as I watch, like the Man in Yellow, the Yellow Man, excuse me, the Yellow Man, as Bruce Springsteen would say, is standing there upright with like a piece of his head missing.
Yes, you can see the brain.
Blood is just kind of pouring out of his nose and his mouth and his ears. It's in the blood. The red of the blood is so vibrant on the yellow coat. It's just very, very disturbing, off-putting. Again, the word of the day. And another gentleman who we quickly realize is the husband of Dorothy is in a chair with a bullet through his head
and a missing ear. That's how we know.
So we find out where it came from. Why that ear was where it was.
That makes sense.
Because.
Exactly. It even contradicts what you would think would make sense, which is they cut his ear to show it to her, to show her that they mean business.
Mm-hmm.
Then why is it just outside?
Sprouting wildlife.
Yes. I mean, it would be in her trash can.
So while this is going on, there's a massive shootout at the Frank's compound with the police. A lot of shit going haywire because the Man in Yellow, or the Yellow Man. I don't know why you keep calling him the Man in Yellow. Halloween 5 on the brain.
The Man in Black.
Yeah, there you go. And he hears his radio, and he says, "I'm going to let them find you on their own." So he goes to leave. He's walking out. As he's leaving, Jeffrey sees Burt Reynolds walking through the parking lot, realizes that it's Dennis Hopper in a Burt Reynolds costume, cosplay, runs back to the room to hide, has the radio. He's phoning and saying, "Hey, I'm here, come help me." And then he realizes, fuck, he's got a radio too. And then this turns into a slasher movie. This turns into Jessica Biel hiding in the closet from Leatherface.
Yeah, so knowing that Hopper has a radio and that he's listening, in quotation mark, he tells the cops, "Hey, I'm hiding in the bedroom. Come get me, please."
Ostensibly, he pulls the "Here I come. You better not come out and pound me" from Home Alone. Yeah.
Yes. Then he hides in the closet and waits there while Hopper walks in, and Hopper he announces to the world that he is there.
He basically comes in with a New Orleans marching band. Like,
yes.
I'm here now.
He shoots the...
For a guy who's got a silenced gun, he's making sure to make enough noise on his own.
He doesn't care about the neighbors anymore.
No.
He shoots the Man in Yellow. I think he even shoots Dorothy's husband that's already dead.
And he's shooting just indiscriminately into the rooms, and then, much like Leatherface in the 2003 masterpiece, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, realizes that because he hears a little ruckus coming, he realizes that the
So Jessica Biel is in the closet.
yeah, the object of his desire is behind the closet. While he was shooting indiscriminately in the bedrooms, McClanahan came out, grabbed the snub nose off of the yellow man's person, took it back in the closet with him. Dennis Hopper, like an idiot, doesn't just shoot at the closet first and then open it. He kind of comes up. He takes one last huff from his oxygen mask, opens it, and it's fucking burn after reading. He opens it.
Get reversed.
Yeah, and just smiles and then gets shot right in the fucking forehead with a snub nose. And he falls down. Laura Dern comes into frame.
Why is she there?
I'm trying to think. She's like, it's not quite Judy Garland, but maybe Anne Margaret would be a better. She like falls against the wall with her hands like splayed out. Oh, Jeffrey.
The birds and squirrels follow her in.
Yes, exactly. And then behind her is Detective Williams, who has his gun drawn.
Too late, buddy.
Yeah.
But there's so many unexplained things. At this point, it's almost just stupid of us to keep saying, well, nothing makes sense here. But why were things staged that way in that apartment other than David Lynch wanted it to be weird, right? I mean, I can imagine that the man in yellow tortured and killed the guy without the ear.
Yeah.
But who fucked up the guy in yellow? And why that way? Why would you leave him just standing up, bleeding from his nose and ears, with a piece of his skull missing? Was it Hopper's work? And if that was Hopper's handiwork, why didn't he kill? Exactly, yeah.
That Tarantino watched this scene, it was like, I think they're onto something with that ear thing.
You know what would have made this movie better? If we had seen what happened that caused him to lose the ear.
And then the Robins bring the light. We go to... I don't know how far in the future.
Well, his dad is fully recovered.
Is he?
Grilling.
Oh, okay. I couldn't tell if that was his dad or not. But all his...
It could be someone else.
It could just be the neighbors, yeah.
The familiarity of the wave, I just assumed. And also because everything in this last sequence is supposed to scream happy ending. So I assumed it was his dad was out of the hospital.
Whoever it is. What we do know is McClanahan and Laura Dern are together, as they do love each other, and they are preparing breakfast, lunch, what have you, with Billy Madison's grandma, and they see a robin with an insect of some sort in its mouth, and basically talking about how the robins bring the light, and I guess this is to tie the beginning and the end together, that what's underneath will never beat like what's pretty on the surface, and...
It's not the final shot, but I believe in the original cut, the final shot is that shot of the bird on the window with the bug in its mouth, while they go, wow, but I think it's a grandma that goes, oh, that's so gross. I could never eat bugs or whatever. Cut to credits. But then I guess there was a test screening and people were kind of puzzled by that ending. So then they had to tack on one last shot of Isabella Rossellini at some park
with her
playing
son.
with her kid. Yeah.
Yeah. And her son's wearing the little birthday hat with the top, the propeller on top, I should say, that is seen in her apartment at one point in the movie. The child runs into her arms and hugs, and then the camera pans to the beautiful blue sky of the summer afternoon, and then we fade to black as Someday by Sugar Ray begins to play over the end credits.
As sung by Dennis Hopper.
Oh, God. And that's where we're...
Someday, motherfucker!
That's where we found out that Sparky was in this movie.
Yes. We also found out it was written and directed by David Lynch, because we couldn't tell.
No shit. A lot of David Lynch.
David Lynch being really snarky about America at a time... Well, no, that's not true. This was made in the 80s. I was going to say, at a time where we need to be as united as ever... I don't need somebody to tell me that America is not great, that it's all surface.
That would have been the Reagan era?
Late
yeah,
80s?
because Bush Sr. took over in 88. So...
The last gasp of the Reagan era.
I mean, maybe that's it. Maybe this is a commentary on the Reagan era. We'll never know because David Lynch will never tell us.
He doesn't have the balls to really like take a stance and be like, this is what my movie is about. Instead, anything you bring to him, he'll go, maybe.
That would be great, though, if they had the Dennis Hopper character. Well, I'll fuck anything that moves, including the economy.
Let's go to real talk so I can explain, make clear to the listeners that I do know that it was Jay from Jay and Silent Bob referencing Dennis Hopper and not the other way around.
Yeah, let's move along. I can't believe how much we got out of this. I was expecting this to be like really short.
That's damn fine coffee you got here in Twin Peaks. And damn good cherry pie.
Brilliant. I have absolutely no idea what's going on.
And we're recording for Real Talk for Blue Velvet.
All right. As I had mentioned in the first portion, Contrarians Corner of Blue Velvet, it was released on September 19th, 1986. A budget of $6 million with a box office return of a little bit under $9 million. Again, that would have been just the box office from the time of release, because I'm pretty sure if we factored in all the DVD sales and retroactive acclaim for this movie, that would probably be a much higher number.
The re-releases, the 3D conversion.
Was originally distributed by DLE Group. Basically, I don't want to butcher the producer's last name. De Laurentiis Entertainment Group. Basically, the whole point is people funding this movie had to found a production group to help get the movie released because no one would touch it.
Can you blame them?
No. Again, 93% on Rotten Tomatoes. As we mentioned in the first portion, that is absolutely a retroactive number of reviews, and basically shows kind of what we argue with Rotten Tomatoes of like, there's so much that it's a very simple concept, but there's so much potential manipulation that can go into those numbers that's why you have to be careful about it, because I believe you'll allude to it in a moment here, but Roger Ebert, of most notable stature, was not a fan of it, and it's easy to find so many reviews and comments from actors at that time that were like, what the fuck is this?
So think of a rotten movie today might not be a rotten movie 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when it finds its acclaim.
Or even a movie that would be, let's just say, 60 or 70% would not be, the 93% of this.
Right.
I really like this movie, so I think that's justified, but I also can definitely concede that it's at its time, it was not something that was like, oh my God. And it's not like now where David Lynch releases something and people already have their minds made up that they're going to fucking love it. This at the time was very much like what is going on right now?
Back then, he was M. Night Shyamalan at the beginning of his career.
That is a tremendous way of putting it.
Before everybody assumed that there was a twist.
Yeah, and I was about to say kind of opposite side of the coin, because now every M. Night movie, everyone has their mind made up they're going to hate it before they go into it. So it's life is about balance type thing. Well, let's go ahead and get into the people that didn't like it before I get into some of my findings about this thing.
Yeah, I told you, I did not see Ebert's review listed on Rotten Tomatoes, so I had to go looking for it. I'll close with that one, but there were two other quotes. Joe Baltaki from Philadelphia Daily News says, Blue Velvet is a beautiful treatment of ugly material. Unfortunately, it is just ugly enough to fascinate a lot of people, particularly weak men who have been made to feel subjugated and insecure by women. What? Is he saying that...
Is that Gavin McGinnis? Is that a Proud Boy that did that?
It's What Culture. So
yeah.
No, it's a Philadelphia Daily News.
Okay.
But is he saying that people would emulate Hopper?
Is it dated? Does it have a date of that review?
Let me look it up. Oh, no, I can't look it up from here.
Okay, that's fine. I'm just curious if someone like at the time reviewed it. Just like... He's got his Flyers jersey on, eating a cheesesteak. He's like, only pussies would really like this kind of movie, you know? It's a terrible Philadelphia accent. I apologize. But commence.
David Nuzair from Real Film Reviews says, weird for weird's sake isn't enough. There has to be something more. I mean, yes.
That statement is correct. I don't think it applies to this movie, but...
we'll get into it. I think you like it more than I do. Mm-hmm. Now, Ebert, from his review...
Big Rob.
Yeah. This is the closing. He says, in Blue Velvet, Rossellini goes the whole distance, but Lynch distances himself from her ordeal with his clever asides and witty little in-jokes. In a way, his behavior is more sadistic than the Hopper character. What's worse, slapping somebody around or standing back and finding the whole thing funny?
All right.
The big RB taking issue with Lynch's detachment from the material.
I mean, I was about to say there's really nothing funny about it, but it's fitting because the first bit here that I had was Isabel Rossellini claims that during the initial filming of the ritualistic rape scene, David Lynch couldn't stop laughing off screen at the weirdness of it all. Though she was baffled as to why he was laughing at the time, Rossellini has said to this day she herself laughs uncontrollably every time she watches a particular scene.
Well, I think that we human beings can react sort of
I laugh at very
illogically.
uncomfortable things.
Yeah, I think extreme situations can bring about weird reactions or unexpected reactions that don't conform to societal norms on the average. But
I think that's such a fascinating case study of Lynch himself that he wrote this thing and then he was just like watching. He's like, "What the fuck is this?"
They are actually doing it. Hopper didn't complain.
I'm getting paid for this.
So I think that a good place to start is what Ebert actually, he goes on at length on his review. I remember reading it in full when I first saw the movie, and I might have mentioned it here in this podcast. His book, I hated this movie. There's a collection of his 1 star and 1.5 star, 1.5 star reviews.
Does it have his review on Friday the 13th, part 4, the final chapter?
It might. I don't know. I remember reading it cover to cover. I didn't care about being spoiled because those are shitty movies.
There have been that's like his review of that on At the Movies is like one of my favorite pro wrestling promos of all time. Like he looks in the camera and he's got his finger up and he's like just fucking cutting a promo on them. It's so great. But I digress. Go ahead.
So his overall point is not entirely dissimilar to what I was playing with in Contrarians Corner. I think that everybody can agree, whether you like the movie or not, that it's fairly clear what it's doing, at least on one level, which is comparing and contrasting the beauty of everyday life in America versus what goes underneath and how twisted and fucked up everything can be. You know, and Kyle MacLachlan kind of travels between both worlds. He's dating a pretty girl. He has a nice house. Even his dad's stroke is kind of is not this dark and deeply like disturbing thing. It's just something that happens to good people and so on. And then he travels into this world where really fucked up shit that you wouldn't even think of happens. And these two worlds coexist in America, in the world, and it's kind of naive for somebody to live in one without acknowledging the other. And so it's a lot of it's stuff that I think it's very interesting. And of course, I'm saying all this, having watched the movie twice, having read about the movie a lot, I'm pretty sure I didn't get all this the first time I watched it, you know? But I think that's there. But what Ebert's issue was, and I could kind of feel it, is that the way that it's shot, the way that Lynch presents it, detracts a little, it cheapens a little bit the deeper themes. Because when you have Isabella Rossellini as an actress and as a character going through what she goes in the movie, and then you have that intercut with really silly stuff from Laura Dern or from just the Community, I think that the contrast works against it. And he was getting really mad basically in that review, and then he does a follow-up and I guess he did a Scorsese editorial where he's like, okay, I didn't mean that Marvel movies suck. I meant here he goes, I appreciate David Lynch as a filmmaker, but this is why I didn't like the movie, which is well made but rubbed me the wrong way. And basically he feels that basically Lynch did Rossellini wrong. He asked her to bear herself out in this movie, and then he intercut her scenes, her subplot with, you know, Laura Dern going on about her dreams. And I think I don't react to it that strongly. I understand that Ebert feels the way he feels about the movie, or felt the way he felt. it doesn't ruin it that way for me. But I can see how somebody could read it that way. To me, it's more that the happy scenes, the town scenes, the romance with Laura Dern and all that stuff is nowhere near as interesting as the really disturbing shit that's going on with Dennis Hopper and with Isabella Rossellini.
I think that's by design.
I agree.
The story isn't really about Laura Dern or the town.
But they're there
or even
enough.
his fucking dad who's
Yeah, but
that's again, a lesser filmmaker. I'm tripping over my words already talking about this. That is something we would ride so hard in a movie that wasn't made by David Lynch. It's like his dad's like potentially dying of this stroke, and it's like referred to in crossfades 3 times in the movie. But again, it's David Lynch, so it's like he gets a pass. I respect your point of view. That's not my interpretation of the movie. In fact, the best example I can make, the way I read the movie, is very similar to an episode of The Simpsons called Bart the Murderer, I want to say, from either season 3 or 4.
Is that the one directed by David Lynch?
That's the one, yeah, where it's just like Bart staring at a wall, and then like Homer comes in and, dumps a vat of whipped cream on himself. Anyway, no, it's basically life is normal and going for him casually, and then he stumbles into the den of the mob and ends up working for them, and then becomes exposed to like the underground life there and everything. The reason I compare the two is because it's not in either case, I don't find it as a situation of it's trying to expose or make like an analogy or pit classes against each other or societal standings. It's just basically this lead character accidentally stumbled into this world that he wasn't familiar with. And in the Simpsons case, it's obviously way more whimsical, and like Bart kind of, I think he owes them a debt, so he has to stay there. In this case, it's all from Kyle MacLachlan, like picking that ear up, taking it there, and then just following his own instincts to stake out these situations and follow into this rabbit hole just with his more morbid curiosity of it all, which a lot of which is driven by him just wanting to fuck Dorothy. And but I don't get that same feeling from it, so I can see like yourself and Big Rob, some of the, not necessarily resentment, but some of the umbrage they could have with the movie doesn't apply to me because that's not how I interpret what I'm watching. And like I said, with like Laura Dern and her character and the town and his mom and his aunt and all that, that is just almost superfluous aspects of the story. I think Laura Dern serves a purpose of bringing Jeffrey back to the center and kind of resetting his standards, because I do believe Jeffrey loves her. I do believe that he's, wants to be with her. It's just this normal dude who found this weird portion of the city just by his like own desires to follow this rabbit hole. So I think the story is more of our darkest, not necessarily, our darkest desires and curiosities. This movie to me is like when you can't sleep and you pull up some weird shit on the internet to read about, like just that, because that's where your mind goes in dark places. And
then you forget to close the browser, and your girlfriend, who has no idea you were looking up that shit online, sees it.
I'm not talking about porn. I'm like
whatever it was that you were looking up, because that's that scene where the worlds collide, which I was not. I think that I betrayed how much I like that scene in Contrarians Corner, because it was 100% true when Isabella Rossellini comes to the house and Laura Dern figures out what's going on. To me, with my reading of the movie, that scene is perfect.
With my reading of the movie too, it's great.
Yeah.
Because it's basically like, here's this fucking scumbag I've been on the side faced with like what I want to be, and they're meeting each other.
Yeah. But I think that you can apply that to the entire movie, not just his life is split into the dark side and the light side, but just the sense that yes, there's this whole mob business that was going on, and I don't think that it exists separately from the rest of the happy-go-lucky community. And I guess because they get so much screen time, I can't really just say, oh well, they're there, but they're superfluous. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens, to call it the happy side of the town, I guess I have more trouble investing on the relationship of Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern, because I see what they're going for, and I like that he likes her, but he's also attracted to this dark stuff that he can't tell her. But on her side, the things that she says and the way that she acts are so just naive that they're comical.
Yeah.
And when you put that against what's going on in the Dennis Hopper plot and the Isabella Rossellini plot, it just, for me to reconcile them, I have to think that it's by design, that he's like, no, but you're supposed to compare them. And it's not that it's silly by accident. It's silly because I want to point at how silly they are when they don't know what's going on.
And when I said superfluous as a story, what I should have been more clear. I think they're superfluous to the Jeffrey character, because I think it's so awesome talking about this, because David Lynch.
He would get such a kick out of knowing that you compare his movie to an episode of The Simpsons.
Well, and also like, we like, if he was here right now, we could be saying all these things, and he would just be like, I don't know. But
maybe
I think it is by design, that the whole idea of his dad potentially dying, and he finds himself in these situations. The way I always interpret it is he's trying to just fucking get away from reality, and like this situation with his dad, and like just find something to keep him distracted. And he's trying to immerse himself in this. And yeah, I in seeing what you're saying too, like the Sandy character is so almost sour. She's so sweet. Like it's so overwhelming. Like, girl next door, and just such a sweetheart type thing. So I can see some of what you're saying, and like the stuff she says to him, but every time he's just so distracted and doesn't like care. And then I do believe when he tells her he loves her, like I really paid attention to that scene this go around. I was like, I really believe that character does love her. It's just he's caught up in all this random shit.
I always, as I've gotten older, I have more issues, and I know that that's just me, not necessarily the movie, because the movie's playing by some conventions, but we were just joking last episode about William Hurt and Andy McDowell going, I love you, marry me, in such a short span of time. Here I'm willing to give it a little more rope, because one, they're much younger characters, and two, because I think that it's also that Lynch is doing it in a way that it's when that happens, they're at the dance, they're on that side of the movie.
And also by that point of the movie, that's not the thing you're going to be questioning. You're not going to be like,
at that point, if just so much weird shit has happened that of course he's saying he loves her. If I wanted to rationalize it even more, I would say it doesn't matter if he loves her or not. He's just saying that he loves her because that's how he needs to say to feel that he's back to normal after all the weird stuff that he's gone through.
It's and Julio and I talked about this while we were watching the movie, and I think we agree. This is definitely his most easily digestible movie.
Yes, I think. Well, okay, I say yes, not having seen every movie he's made. I've watched a handful, and
yeah, I'm sorry. The movies that like Eraserhead, Elephant Man. I watched Dune in college, but I was higher than giraffe pussy when I watched it, so I don't really remember too much of it.
It probably made perfect sense.
Yeah, I was like, this is great. And then I watched Mulholland Drive in the middle of the night, and his movies, I mean, are perfect for that. Eraserhead is a prime example.
Oh, yeah. I finally watched Eraserhead
it's
with my
so
friend
weird.
Drew. Yeah, it's just, there's not even a plot there. You can
No. That's every time I've talked to people about that don't like it, I'm like, you tried to make way too much sense of it.
Yep.
When I mean easily digestible, I mean
there's a beginning, middle, and end.
It's a coherent movie, and I think did you say you thought Mulholland Drive was his most commercially viable?
That's what it always struck to me that Mulholland Drive was his most, I don't know about commercially, but critically acclaimed.
Okay. Yeah, this is the one I always feel like when David Lynch comes up, this is the go-to. And a lot of that could be, again, the retroactive thing. But whatever the case, in my opinion, this is his most, I guess, the movie that's most synonymous with him. Be it just the general public. And also one that I've, heard people say that you wouldn't think that they like it, that type of thing. What I'm trying to build towards is it's still a David Lynch movie. And like, if you came into it during the scene where Rossellini's like nude in his arms and they're just like chilling in her living room and she's like bruised up and like all that's going on. I realized when I was watching that, I had watched this movie leading into that, so when that happened, it felt normal to me, and I was really immersed in the scene. And then I stopped for a second. I was like, "This is so fucking weird. What's going on right now?" And like you said, the mom, Laura Dern's mom, just acting like what's going on is completely normal.
But that's not a feeling that you get in anything that has, on the dark side of the movie. All the Dennis Hopper stuff. I mean, yes, they're being weird, but you don't feel the need to point out, hey, this is not how the average human being acts.
Well, and I mean, there's so much to that. I guess maybe playing into your argument, the sides of Happy Life are always the ones that are really well lit and like colorful and look good. And then all the Dennis Hopper and Isabel Rossellini shits, all the muted colors and like the lighting's really shitty and
the swearing.
Yeah. And Dennis Hopper is the only person I think swears in this movie, which is fine. He seemed very happy to do it. It's a strange movie. It is, but it works more so than a lot of Lynch movies or projects that I've seen. And also a lot of, I mean, he's a very influential and mimicked director of people that try to just make weird movies be weird. We were in between Contrarians Corner and this. We were talking about fucking Nicholas Winding Refn, and that's a guy who, especially with Only God Forgives and Neon Demon, was in many aspects just trying to make overly artistic and artsy shit. There's an art to making weird movies that are good.
I think, I wouldn't accuse Winding Refn of not having a purpose to his weirdness, but I think that Lynch definitely has the upper hand there, maybe because he's been doing it for longer or what. But
I think he has a more refined definition of what he wants to make versus just fucking broad brush strokes.
I was thinking about this as we were watching it because there's the nugget of the idea of in the back of my head that it's like, okay, but why would you do this? A little bit going back to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original episode, when we're like, I get it, I get what you're going for as far as the visceral reaction, but why?
You were like that.
Yes,
okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I was quoting the whole movie.
Yes, but then I was thinking, of course, Alex likes it so much because you're in for that visceral reaction that Texas Chainsaw Massacre gives you, and you get nothing but a visceral reaction when Hopper is just torturing this woman, and then when he's torturing McLachlan, right? And so I'm thinking, as I'm watching, I was like, yes, I am reacting to it, but was it necessary? What makes you as a director decide, okay, this is how I'm going to go about it, and this is how far I'm going to push the audience and push these buttons. But the thing is, as maybe because of as familiar as I am with Lynch's work, I feel like I'm confident that there's a purpose behind it, so I can just go and say, well, there's a reason, and that reason is that we need to be kind of repulsed by what's going on screen so that the transition to the normal stuff hits us harder.
Yeah. I don't think both of those scenes should be in it. I think you get enough, allotment for one really weird scene. So like the weird sex scene, and then the scene where he like kisses him and then beats him up, but like while he's lip syncing to that Roy Orbison song, and then that old prostitute gets out and starts dancing on the roof of his car. I would have done away with it. You could have just easily just had him beat him up. Like,
but that's probably one of the things that people remember the most about the movie.
Which is fair, but like for me, it's like you can only have one like scene that weird in a movie without me like.
Maybe if you're not David Lynch, but if you're Lynch, you just get away with as many as you want.
Yeah.
But there is something else that Ebert mentions in his review. It's just that the positive reaction from critics everywhere else seemed to be appreciating mostly style over substance. And he was like, I can appreciate the style. That doesn't mean I have to like the movie. And I can see that. I can see how when I experience the movie, I am mostly appreciating the style. As in, man, that's just so fucking weird. And that's just so bold in a way that he would just tell Dennis Hopper, yeah, you do this and see how far you can take it. And that he would ask this sort of performance from Isabella Rossellini and be, not to take anything from her. Obviously, she's being brave at doing, going through this. But also him as a director saying, and then at this point, Laura Dern's ex-boyfriend is gonna be there with his buddies. And you mentioned Riverdale. I was thinking of Biff and his gang from Back to the Future.
Nice.
They're so just that
Cliche.
aesthetic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then she steps out naked and bruised and bleeding, whatever. That is such a shocking moment, but I don't think of it. I don't hold it in high esteem because it made me feel something special. But other than, wow, that's really bold that they went and did this.
Mm-hmm.
So I can see how that could wear off after watching it a few times if all you're connecting to is the style and not something deeper in the movie. I don't know that I connect to anything deeper in this movie. Do you?
I feel I do connect with the Kyle MacLachlan character. The idea of just kind of wanting to distract yourself from real life and just ending up on this weird adventure. It's something I can definitely I can't relate to,
the Denton years.
I've never been in a closet watching like shit unfold like that. And, it's obviously my life's never been a David Lynch movie, but I can relate to the idea of wanting to distract yourself from real world things and finding yourself going down these different rabbit holes and different adventures, and all the while having these positive things in front of you that you kind of are willfully ignorant to. And again, one of the rare occurrences of the Contrarians is you and I having completely different interpretations of a movie, and that's definitely happening with this here. So I feel I relate to that. At the same time, as much as I relate to that, there's times in the movie where it's just I'm taken out of it just by how fucking weird it is. I'm just like, all right. I'm like, even as much as I could see myself in this character, 10 minutes ago, this is just. Let's just talk about how weird this is right now.
What is it with Dean Stockwell?
For real, that scene of him with that shop light in his face is fucking crazy. But there are things that I connect to, and I love that scene of him and Laura Dern dancing when they tell each other they love one another.
You're such a fucking romantic. Every time it comes back to that, it's like, of course, because you and love, and
I'm a firm believer in it. But yeah, just the way it's presented and shot, and of the David Lynch things I've experienced and taken in, and I use that loosely because, like, you ever listen to his album?
No.
Yeah, I've
he
listened.
Sings, or is he a musician?
He's a musician. I can't tell. There's some like audio drops they use. I can't tell if it's him or not, but he had a song from that album called I Know. The music video for it is the girl who played Lucy on Parks and Rec. The girl Tom loved, the smoking hot. She's the one that moved to Chicago, and then he goes and tracks her down to bring her back to work in Pawnee. You would absolutely.
Do they end up together?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I know who she is.
Yeah. Anyways, she's in it, and the music's just so weird. So when I say like David Lynch things I've taken in, and it's movies, music, all the things he's done. This is definitely the one that I've watched and been like, yes, this connects with me. It's still weird in many aspects, but this is definitely something that I like. Fucking July, I'm gonna go get this on Criterion when the half price sale comes along.
I wonder if how much you connect to this movie
because of Kyle MacLachlan's ass.
Yes.
Told you.
You gasped audibly.
I forgot the whole thing's in frame for like a minute.
No, I was gonna say I wonder if how much you connect to the movie, not you, but just the world in general.
The royal we
changes or has to do with how much this makes it sound like more serious, but how much darkness you've experienced, how much have you found yourself to different degrees on the Kyle MacLachlan path of I'm gonna go down this weird dark road and just find myself in situations that later regret. Obviously, like you said, never to to the degree that it happens in the movie, but the more you can relate to the experience of...
I've had a fairly cushy life. I'm not trying to compare it to it, but
yes, but
making decisions you shouldn't and just stuff
maybe less cushy than mine, and that's why you can still connect to it more than I do, and maybe why you and I can connect to it even more than, say, Jordan. Jordan, I told you, like, he told me that he did not... He was like, this movie's not for me. And
this is absolutely a movie too that if someone like yourself right now, and if Jordan, like, if you say you don't like it, you don't really even have to explain it to me.
But I want to hear about it. I want to know, because I wonder if he has a different reading than the two of us. And he's just like, no, to me it was just fucking weird. Or maybe he was just extremely put off by the violence of it. I wouldn't fault anybody for being just...
He's 22, 23, 24?
Yeah, I think he's mid-20s.
Okay. Not like...
approaching mid-20s.
Neither of us are grizzled vets at this point, but there is...
They're certainly older than that.
There's definitely a separation.
But see, that sounds... I don't want to sound reductive of anybody's opinion if they just absolutely not connect to it.
No,
it's not like, oh man, wait till you live life and then you're gonna get...
With that age gap, like, you can't understate the idea of people like you and myself and of our age brackets that saw all kinds of weird shit on TV, staying up late in your room just watching like TNT Monster Vision on Friday nights and Saturday nights. Shit that wasn't around for people that are as little as, 8 years younger than us. And so our definition of weird may be different. That doesn't make that opinion any lessened or anything like that, but it's something I always think about when I talk to people who, especially about horror movies and weird movies like this, that say, I'd never seen anything like it. And it's like, I just think about, didn't you ever go to the video store and just like stare at the cover of Zombie for 30 minutes? Like, just being like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. See, to me, it's less a question of how weird is weird, but more of what you were saying before, which is how much can you relate to the idea of going down the wrong path or going down the weird,
if that's even
path.
How you interpret the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you do and you have life experiences that kind of are similar, then this movie works for you on a very specific level. To me, and like I said in Contrarians Corner, I said it earlier in this segment, the moment where I connect to the movie the most is that clashing of worlds where you have somebody that you love, but that maybe doesn't know everything about you. And then that comes to the forefront in the worst possible way. That to me felt just so human and relatable. And not that I can think off the top of my head of a time when something like that has happened to me, but I can connect to it more. I think that's, if not universal, then at least it's more digestible. Well,
it's, especially now, like I was talking about earlier, it's that the example you made about your girlfriend pulling up your phone. That's a scene that it's basically like, your girlfriend pulls up your search history and is like, Latina asses. What the hell is this?
It's Isabella Rossellini.
Isabella Rossellini feet. Just like that scene is so universal. It's your parents finding fucking weed in your sock drawer, shit like that. It's done in the most abstract way possible, but that scene is relatable on so many levels. And I still, it's going to bother me for probably the next few weeks about what the mother is supposed to be in that, about how she's just so calm about everything and like trying to figure out what her role is supposed to be in that.
I think, see, in my reading of the movie, that fits because
again, it could just be Lynch being weird, be weird. Yeah.
Like, wouldn't it be really fucked up if you just don't react? But to me, if you're seeing it as these two worlds colliding, she is the one that doesn't really have an emotional investment.
She's got no stake in it.
Yeah, exactly. No. She's just like, okay, I'm going back to, it'll be okay if I just behave as normal. I'll just call the cops. It doesn't really hit me.
And she's married to a fucking detective, so she's probably seen some weird stuff in her day. Man, so 47 seconds in, we haven't even gotten to.
I know.
Yeah,
we've been walking around,
dude. I honestly, when we started before we recorded, when the movie was over, I was like, "There's not a whole lot to the plot of this." I was kind of worried that we were just going to blitz through Contrarians Corner, which is clearly not the case because we're on path to being one of our longer episodes. So let me get to my business. I already talked about release date, budget, director, all that good stuff.
David Lynch was nominated for Best Director for this. Fortunately, he did not win. That went to Oliver Stone for Platoon in the year of 1987. Let's see what else we got here. Lynch to this day has not won a single Oscar. Let's see.
Like he would show up to collect it.
For real.
He would just send a monkey to grab it.
Who was it that didn't even show up? Pesci and someone else didn't show up for Best Supporting Actor.
Oh, this year?
Yeah. Anthony Hopkins.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
Who ended up winning Supporting Actor? Brad Pitt won. That's why they didn't show up, because they were like, yeah, Brad Pitt's going to win.
Pitt's going to win.
God bless. The Dorothy role was written by David Lynch for Deborah Harry.
I don't know who that is.
Blondie, the lead singer of Blondie.
Oh, has she been in movies?
Has she been in movies? Let me finish the second part here.
Oh.
Harry, sick of receiving offers to play the weirdo after she played such a character in Videodrome, turned it down. Have you not seen Videodrome?
I've seen Videodrome. I didn't know that was her.
Okay, yeah. Absolutely smoking hot blonde. Yeah, that's her. Molly Ringwald was originally offered the role of Sandy, but her mother objected to her starring in it due to the graphic content of the film. That would be weird.
But it would 100% underline that idea.
The innocence of the character. Yeah, absolutely. The character of Frank was to breathe helium at the intervals when he used the gas mask in Lynch's original script, but Dennis Hopper suggested this be changed to amyl nitrate, which he knew was used to enhance sexual experiences. How he knew that, I don't... Yeah. God bless him. Hopper only realized years later how bizarre and therefore fitting the concept of helium-breathing maniac talking in a high voice would have been. Lynch, however, felt that using helium might elicit laughter in the audience, which would have been undesirable.
Yeah, it would have been a step too far. There's so much going on there.
Exactly. It would have been like, for as much as this movie's too much, it would have been too much. The role of Jeffrey was originally offered to Val Kilmer, who turned it down, describing the script he read as pornography, although he says he would have done the version that finally made it to screen. So what did he read?
He read a completely different script, and Lynch was just secretly filming him while he was reading.
For
laughs.
Even just entertaining the idea. Val Kilmer's too pretty for this. Like, Kyle McClanahan's a good-looking dude, but he's got like kind of that Michael Shannon good-looking dude, where it's just like there's still something kind of off about this guy. It's a unique look is the best way to describe it. Val Kilmer would be way too pretty for this.
Yeah, I mean, back
86 Val Kilmer.
86
Yeah.
Val Kilmer.
We're not talking MacGruber, Coke ponytail Val Kilmer. David Lynch had never seen any of Laura Dern's previous films. Isabella Rossellini had seen Mask and was so convinced by her performance that she wondered why Lynch had cast a blind girl to play in the movie.
That's amazing.
That I subtly lost my shit reading that. In the original screenplay, the sex scene between Jeffrey and Dorothy was longer. Jeffrey was to spin the propeller on her son's hat when Dorothy undresses him, and Jeffrey learns Frank is coming. Dorothy thinks Jeffrey is her husband, Don, and cries when saying Jeffrey's name. Again, just all David Lynch shit.
All this according to Val Kilmer, who read the original screenplay.
And then a pizza guy was going to come in. As I mentioned to you, Robert Loggia was originally considered to play Frank, which would have been just too much. Also considered was Willem Dafoe, which...
too much in a different way.
Karen Allen, Rebecca De Mornay, Jodie Foster, Angelica Houston, Diane Keaton, Sybil Shepherd, Sissy Spacek were all considered to play the part of Dorothy, which Diane Keaton, I don't like it.
I don't like any of those just because
I don't want to see him that way.
I don't want to see them go through that. I guess this is the only Rossellini movie that I've seen. Isabella Rossellini. I told you I've seen her in season 2 of Alias.
Yeah. I was going through a filmography. I'm sure I've seen something else, but nothing else, nothing popped out. And then again, the last one, just because I read it off to you, and I wanted to include it just because neither of us knew it, that David Lynch was offered Return of the Jedi, but turned it down. Just what kind of universe we would live in if David
Lynch... based on Blue Velvet, they offered him Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi would have been before this.
Based off Dune.
Yeah. Which makes sense. Yeah, God, what franchise aimed towards children would see this and say, "Hey,
Well, George Lucas could be weirder and kinkier than we thought.
yeah, they saw it. We got a project. It's called Honey, I Shrunk the Kids. You want to tackle this?" So, obviously, with a lot of movies we do, there, people were potential for different roles, and but with this one, it's kind of fun to play those parts. But obviously, from this, he gained an affection for Laura Dern because he used her in and out for projects for the next 30 years to come. And I've not seen a single episode of Twin Peaks, but that was basically spawned from this movie, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, is that so? I mean, I know McLachlan is one of the main characters. It's on my to watch list.
How was it on HBO, Showtime? Like, what was it?
Oh, the new one, the new version.
No, like the original one.
Oh, the original. I have no idea.
Did it air on ABC Friday family nights?
No, if you wanted to watch it, you just subscribed to this mailing list, and Lynch himself would deliver a VHS tape of the newest episode every week
to the linchpins around the world.
Yes.
We're not going to cover ground on David Lynch that hasn't already been covered. He's a fascinating dude. He makes fascinating projects.
Filmmaker's filmmaker.
He is, but with that in mind, his shit works differently for different people, and that is probably one of the main things, especially as I've gotten older, I admire about him, is that he doesn't really give a fuck what you think about what he makes. He's just going to make it to make it. And when I say give a fuck, what I mean is he's not going to make some Marvel dribble where it's just shit made to draw.
I was gonna go, he's not gonna bring back the Emperor, but okay, if you want to go take a cheap shot at Marvel again,
you're right.
when there's a much better example.
We need to not we. I need to start directing all of my jabs to Rise of Skywalker. I vented all of my frustrations in our Avengers episode, our 5-hour epic. So you're right. He doesn't care about bringing back the Emperor and writing out all the minorities just so that he can appease Reddit. He has his movies that he wants to make, and he makes them, and he doesn't really care if that garners him any attention or anything like that. Like you said, that's probably a huge reason that he's had 6 Best Director nominations and has never won, because he's probably not going to fucking show up to get it.
I didn't know he'd been nominated that many times. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah. He's not to compare him to Woody Allen because they obviously don't do the same thing, but I think he's definitely one of those. If he makes a movie, the Academy is going to be like, well, we kind of have to acknowledge it, so here it is, but you're not going to win. So, you're not Green Book.
This is so the linchpins don't throw a fit.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm glad we did this. I really don't know what other movies he's done that would work with our little formula that we do as well. Maybe Mulholland Drive.
I was going to say Mulholland Drive makes sense. Like, it feels like a traditional movie for a good chunk of its runtime before it goes batshit crazy.
So maybe a year from now we can revisit, put our linchpin hat back on and go back to that.
One of the things I remember the most about Mulholland Drive is that Robert Forster is in it.
R.I.P.
Yeah, for 30 seconds, but he gets a close-up. I think he plays like a cop or something. He steps out of his car, you get the close-up, and you're like, Robert Forster's in this movie. Nope. You don't see him again.
83%, so we might have to bend our usual format, but yeah, we could visit that.
It'll be a bonus episode, and we'll do it with Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan, send us a voicemail or something, or you just give us the very basics of how you feel about Blue Velvet and why.
Yeah, just do the Eddie where you sit in your car and talk about the Entourage movie.
Yes.
That kind of covers my thoughts on the matter.
I think it's funny, though, that we haven't really... You would have expected us to talk a little more about Hopper, but we've kind of... When you said it's been 30-something minutes and we still haven't talked... I thought you were saying we still haven't talked about Dennis Hopper.
Oh. That too. I didn't even think of that because we just we're quoting him and mocking his performance so much that he's fucking Dennis Hopper. Like he's gonna knock whatever he does out of the park, yes. Even if he's King Koopa, he's gonna knock it out of the park. And he clearly had no qualms about knocking this performance out of the park.
fearless. But you can go again. I feel like this is the second or third time that I've made this sort of disclaimer. You can say the same about Isabella Rossellini, right? It's just that Hopper makes that impression. You know, with her, you kind of like look away because it's just so disturbing and whatever. But with him, it's disturbing, but that's the part that it's kind of fun in a way. You're gonna quote him. You're gonna like talk about how fucked up he is. You're not really gonna talk about Isabella Rossellini like walking out naked or anything. You know what I mean? That's
well, even from the perspective too of like that her performance being so vulnerable, all those things. These are these things that you can like as an actor, an agent reading that script, you're like, hey, you could do this and it could be good for you for this, and this reason. Reading that Frank part, it's like you're just going to be the fucking, the vile, the scum of the earth type. And to come into that and then do it so brazenly, it's just, it speaks to him as an actor because, that thing I read about like Willem Dafoe and Robert Loggia were in the running. I don't know how far that went. It's possible they read the script and like, nope. It's a credit to him. And also just with how batshit this movie gets at parts, it can become comical in a sense. And at no point did I not believe that Frank, because of Hopper's character, wasn't that crazy.
Yeah, no, he's scary the entire time that he is on screen. He's just terrifying, which is a credit to his performance. That's just, I guess what I was saying earlier was just that you would make memes about his performance and his character. You can't really meme Rossellini's performance and character
Correct.
here. Yeah,
like there should be a go-to meme I have on my phone of just, don't fucking look at me. Don't you fucking look at me. I read too about it was the first time him and Rossellini ever worked together, and I guess sequentially the first scene they filmed was the weird sex scene, and she was nude under her robe and he didn't know that. So when he like tells her the spread your legs thing, like that's why his reaction's kind of like
cut.
Where's the merkin? Yeah. We watch all these movies. We're like, man, you can tell they're having such a good time, and I bet it was so fun on set. This doesn't really like strike me as they were cutting up in between takes or anything like that.
No,
it's just like, Kyle, get your dick out.
But my contract says just the butt.
Course of action here. We got to rate it. This is an A for me, not an A+, but a solid A.
3.5. It's as good as Michael. This is why rating is just a joke.
Yeah.
But, 3.5 because, I don't.
Hey man, they both have Sparky.
Yes, there you go. There's a link. I appreciate the style more than the substance, and I can't help, especially on this second watch, I can't help but wish that the movie had dug deeper on the things that I'm interested in. I want to see what happens to that relationship after Laura Dern just figure out what's going on. But instead, and I can't believe I didn't mention this in Contrarians Corner, literally the next scene is her on the phone with him saying, I'm sorry.
That's also her being
together.
18.
Yes,
yeah.
but it's less interesting than, again, going back to Michael, I can't believe we're referencing Michael so much on a David Lynch episode, but how you were saying that there was a much more interesting movie to be made about the William Hurt and Andy McDowell characters as older people that are damaged but want to get together. The same thing to me. There's a more interesting movie to be made about these young people that just went through this really horrible shit, but we just fast forward to the happy ending so quickly.
So basically, you want your Revolutionary Road version,
the young version,
with Kyle MacLachlan and Laura Dern.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really care about. It's cool to see Hopper getting shot in the head and everything, but that entire final sequence, this slasher sequence,
I don't know how that didn't come up. Like, for as much just visceral horror shit that I've watched and constantly reference on that, just that one static shot of him after he's been fucking shot in the head. I don't know what the goop they used behind him was to be brains, but it was disgusting. And the yellow man with like the part of his brain exposed, and then when Jeffrey takes the gun from him and it kind of nudges him, so like more blood comes out of his nose and mouth.
Yeah.
I'm like, that is disgusting. That is disturbing shit, man.
But I didn't. I would have traded that for just something that has more to do with the relationship between Laura Dern and Kyle MacLachlan and Isabella Rossellini. It's cool that he got shot, but to me, that's just it's more mechanic than anything else,
Yeah.
right? We have a bad guy; he needs to get his. But what about all the emotional stuff that I just connected like 5 minutes ago? You know, so yeah, 3.5. It's still, I mean, it's a good movie. I think anybody should watch it at least once.
Yeah.
Wouldn't blame them if they bail halfway through.
It's I become more and more sympathetic and understanding of this the older I get. It's definitely one of those movies that if you watched it at 16, you would probably take not the right things away from it.
Oh, I definitely got a lot more out of it today than I did when I watched it the first time, maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, it's one of the rare movies that I would be like, don't watch it until you're like 30, because it's
Or watch it, but don't be afraid of giving another shot. 10
down
years
the
from
line.
now.
Yeah. So moving along, I mean, Jesus, this is going to be a 2-hour podcast. There's so much to say, but I don't know why I was worried that we're going to have a hard time talking about this. There's a lot that goes into it. I will be buying this come the 50% off sale. Plugs, moving along to our musical plug, who provide our opening and closing tracks, that being the Festive Years, who provide the opening of Last Stand and the closing of Summer of 99. TheFestiveYears.com will satiate all of your Festive Years needs.
Yes, our friend and fellow podcaster Hans Rothgieser, he did our logo. He can do your logo. You can contact him on Twitter at Mildemonios, MILDMONIOS. Email him at mildemonios@hotmail.com. You can ask him about his zombie novel, Requiem por Lurin, third on a best-selling series. You can just check mildemonios.pe for all his stuff, including his 2 podcasts, Nacion Combi, which is in Spanish, about just Peruvian current affairs, and Living in Peru, about people that moved to Peru. The complete opposite of what I did with my life.
All right, so before Julian and I get into our vanity plugs, our own personal recommendations, we do have some important business to get to.
Yes. We have, if you've been online, you're part of our circle. Well, you know the Livestream for the Cure 2020 is coming up. It's the weekend of May 30th. May 30th is Saturday, so that means that it starts on the 28th. The 30th is when we will be on. As you might remember, we were part of the Livestream 2019 edition. We did Basic Instinct 2.
Oof.
A merry time was had by all, except for maybe the 2 of us, because we watched the movie before the show, and it was grueling. I don't think that we're ready to reveal what movie we're going to be doing this year, but I can tell you that we're going to be on, like I said, on May 30th at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, so clear your calendars and be ready for just another live episode of ours. We'll be there with Nick. I don't know if any other people are going to join, but you can be there, be on the chat, and donate. We'll figure out some cool prizes. But yeah, mark your calendar. Here's the official promo.
Can you imagine a world immune to all forms of cancer?
Ladies and gentlemen, the time has come for our 4th annual live stream for the cure.
And this year, we need your help more than ever.
Please join us May 27th through May 31st for 48 hours of live content from guests and podcasts around the world.
We'll be aiming for our most ambitious goal to date as we try to raise $10,000 for the Cancer Research Institute.
Please visit www.livestreamforthecure.com for more information on this year's event and how you can be a part of it. Together, we can make a difference.
So that'll be the 4th Livestream for the Cure. We have another promo here. I was telling Alex before we started recording that I fucked up and I forgot to fulfill a promise I made. It turns out that our friends from Ghosts of the Stratosphere just had their 2nd anniversary, and they were just collecting messages congratulating them, and I said, sure, I'll record one and send it to you guys. And then I completely forgot about it because we were recording. It wasn't Michael. It was whatever we did before Michael that it was ever after. I was probably Drew Barrymore out, and I completely just forgot.
Doug Gray Scott was getting you.
Yes, yeah, just all the Wolverine conundrums. So to make up for that, we wish him a second anniversary here on air, and we're going to play their promo, which we've never done.
From the galactic depths of the comic book universe comes the ghosts of the stratosphere, ready to galvanize and energize your mind with the latest of comic book news and reviews. And why are you stopping me? Yes, that's much better. Hi, this is Andy Larson for Ghosts of the Stratosphere. Join me every week along with my co-hosts Rob Stewart and Chad Smith, as well as a cavalcade of fantastic comic book guests, as we dish out heaping helpings of the greatest and latest of comic book news and reviews. New shows posted every Tuesday with bonus shows every first Friday of the month. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher under Ghosts of the Stratosphere, as well as on our website, www.gotstratosphere.com. Hope to see you soon, folks.
All right, so that was the Ghosts of the Stratosphere. Congratulations, Andy, Rob, Chad, Stu, Nicole, and Amanda. Not all of them are in every episode, but if you like comics like I do, like you do, Alex, no,
Yes.
You don't read them as much as I do now and as much as you used to, I guess, but
I try.
I know. But yeah, no, they're a lot of fun. So what do you have to plug?
I finally finished Crystal Lake Memories, the fucking 7-hour documentary on Friday the 13th. Like, I've been plugging away at that for easily 6 months.
7 hours as in it's broken up, or is this just opening credits and then the end credits?
It's a
coming?
7-hour documentary. Like, it's a 2-disc Blu-ray set. And God bless him, Reed lent it to me, and he's watched it twice because he's watched it with the director commentary on it. It's not from lack of will. God knows I love Friday the 13th stuff. It's just a 7-hour documentary is an investment. So I kind of parceled it out when I finally watched it. Essentially, you know, there's...
You could have watched Blue is the Warmest Color 2.5 times.
Or I could have watched The Irishman once. Basically, because there's the 10 Jason movies, there's Freddy vs. Jason, and then there's the remake. Called them Jason movies, Jesus. I'm annoying myself.
Those MCU movies.
Yeah, and then there's like the retrospective. So basically what they do is they parcel it out. There's about 30 to 45 minutes dedicated to every movie, and it's like a mini documentary on every single movie, and then they smash it together to make this one like overarching. It's narrated by Corey Feldman, obviously, because he was Tommy Jarvis in Part 4. And they get almost anyone back. The most notable exemptions or exceptions, I guess, was Kevin Bacon.
Oh, I was about to ask you.
Crispin Glover.
Glover doesn't surprise me.
No. But they all talk about how eccentric he was, which is great. And then Kelly Hugh, I believe her name is. She played the kind of Weapon X in X2, the one that gets filled up with the adamantium.
Lady Deathstrike?
She's kind of Lady Deathstrike, but I believe Kelly Hugh is her name. She is in Part 8. She's not in it. And there's one more that I can't remember, but there were a couple people you could tell kind of big time to the project. But like I said, Corey Feldman was there, and they brought like anyone they could get back, and it was refreshing to see how many of them realize it was just like this stupid job they took, but they're part of this kind of fun franchise, and how not seriously they take themselves. And then like the very small pocket of people in there that talk about the movies like it was like, this was my character's motivation at the time, and it's like, you were just there to get killed by Jason. But it's not something for everybody, but if you're a fan of the franchise in any aspect, and it's a pretty well-made documentary. They did, for people that know the franchise, there was the first 8 that were owned by Paramount and then owned by New Line, and then Jason Goes to Hell and Jason X that were Warner Brothers movies, and I believe are now owned by New Line, or it might be backwards, New Line and then Warner Brothers. Whatever the case, it would have taken a lot to get the rights for all the footage because they have footage from all the movies they use. There's a lot of behind the scenes stuff, and there's also just really interesting things about like, yeah, we filmed this, but they said no, so the footage got deleted, and or I guess at that time incinerated.
It got chucked in the lake.
Pretty much. You know this because I have the fucking theatrical poster in my living room. Part 8 is my favorite, and all the stories of that about like, yep, we're gonna give you $120 million, and then like, so they write this just insane elaborate script, and then right before they started filming, yeah, you know what we told you, we're giving you a third of that. So Jason Takes Manhattan became Jason being filmed in Toronto for 80% of the movie, and then moved down.
And then Jason Takes a Cruise.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly it. And they talk about like how illogical the movie is and all the gaps that it provides, and then to me, finally making it to the end. And they talk about, they're very forward with the really negative reaction the remake got. And
that's refreshing.
Yeah. And like all the actors that were in it that were interviewed for it were like, yeah, it kind of sucked for everyone to hate it, but like I thought it was cool that we were part of this. And Marcus Nispel, the guy who directed the Texas Chainsaw we did, he's in it too. And he's so just European as fuck. He's just like, yes, Jason comes out and kills, you know, that's what we do. The highlight of it is you get through everything, these awesome stories, everything that like the franchise has been through, and then the credits, while the credits roll for it, and it's a good amount, it's like 10 or 15 minutes. What they did was they had everyone they brought back for talking heads reenact their most famous line from the movie.
That is awesome.
So it's just like a 10-minute montage of all these people from all 12 movies just reenacting things they said from it. So yeah, it's really cool.
What do the Jasons do? I'm assuming that they bring the Jasons back.
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's one of the best parts. Okay, so for those of you who may not know, there's not really a Jason. It's a little kid in the first one. The second one, the third one, the fourth one, and the fifth one were all individual actors, and then Kane Hodder played it for 6, 7, 8, and 9 and 10. So Kane Hodder was the most synonymous with it. So he has like the best stories, I guess. But the guys who like played it before him still just treat it like this bullshit role that they have that they don't care about. Like the guy in part 2 is some dude who has the most thickest New York accent. It's like, I was running through the damn woods and I couldn't see out of the hole in my mask. And then the guy who is in part 4 was some like, he was in a movie with John Wayne. I can't remember, Ted something or other. I can't remember his name, but he had this awesome thing because they were talking about like Corey Feldman's like, yeah, he didn't really hang out with the cast. He wasn't really, friendly with anybody. And then it cuts to him. He's like, my thought was Jason shouldn't be cutting up with the cast members in between takes. They should be scared of Jason. But then, yeah, so there's really not much to it. But Kane Hodder was the guy that the Jason mannerisms that most people, normal people like yourself, are familiar with, are the ones he kind of patented and invented. And so it's so funny to see him because he's just like a jacked dude. He's a stuntman who, it wasn't a Friday the 13th movie, but like there was a pyro accident in a movie he was on the set on. So like his neck is like all scar tissue from being burned over. And so just seeing him like sitting there talking about the roles and then doing the movements and everything, you can just see it with like the mask on him. It's great. There's no conceivable way I can convince someone who does not care about that franchise to watch a fucking 7-hour documentary on it. But if you have at any point in time really enjoyed, or, like myself, have been a connoisseur of the franchise, I can't recommend it enough. It's honest about what it is. Like I said, there's stuff in there I had no idea about, like Gina Gershon like auditioned for part 5. That's probably the most entertaining part of the documentary, because the guy that got to direct 5, like, Paramount's whole thing was, we hate that these movies make so much money because they're an embarrassment to our industry, but the fact that they do make so much money means we have to keep making them. So it was basically cost cutting measures. So they just got a porn director for part 5. And it's funny to hear him talk about like, oh yeah, I got cast because of how big my boobs are, and like thinking about that through the eyes of like 2020. It's a fascinating piece of business. And shockingly, the person who comes across as the biggest cock is Corey Feldman. And I'm being completely facetious when I say shockingly.
Even though he's doing the narration?
The narration's fine, but like, so he does the narration, but then he also supplies the talking heads for the 2 that he was in. And me and a friend of the podcast, Reed, talked about. There's this one specific part where he's like, I wanted to be in part 5, but then Steven Spielberg had to fuck it up and make the Goonies. And it's just like, you fucking asshole.
Kind of on around the same level.
Moving along to normal things.
Okay, so not on the same side. On the completely opposite side of the spectrum when it comes to, I don't know, critical acclaim. I finally watched The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Listeners with a good memory might remember that last time Eddie was here, so it was for Camille, he kind of offhandedly mentioned that was in his mind the best movie of 2019 on his list. That was number 1, and I watched it, and I don't think it's my number 1 because it doesn't feature Avengers, but it's definitely top 10 material. It's Joe Talbot's first feature, and it's really good. I'm trying to find a way of explaining why it's good, because part of it is so ethereal. It's just the way that it's made. Only unlike Blue Velvet, in my argument against it or whatever, I don't think it sacrifices style for heart.
Okay.
And so there's a lot of the way it's shot is beautiful. And I'm not talking about like, oh, you're just watching paintings or whatever, but you know, the way that the score is done, in the little surreal touches. But then the characters themselves are just they're dealing with something that's so human. And the basic story is this black guy is kind of obsessed with a house that his grandfather built, you know, obviously generations ago, and now it's owned by a white family. And several times a week he comes to the house while the family's gone and kind of like fixes it up, paints stuff, and something happens and the family has to move out, and now the house is empty. And so he begins this sort of quest to own the house. And that's just kind of the starting point, and from then on it goes somewhere else. But it's not so much about the plot, although there is a story that this course of action ends at, you know, on something. But it's really about just how he sees this home it represents, because he lived in it when he was young, before his family kind of lost the house. And so it has a lot to do with the nostalgia and how to him this house represents the good times. And just against any rational thought, he's just determined to, it's his goal, is what keeps him going, even though life is really hard. And he has his best friend kind of like supports him, and it's the relationship between them it's sweet, but it's also complex. And of course they live in the hood, and the contrast of them going to like the gentrified neighborhoods of San Francisco and then going back to the hood. And it's really good. It's on Amazon Prime right now. I can see people kind of like checking out, because at the same time it takes its time. But it was never a problem for me, because when there was, in quotation marks, nothing going on, there was still so much going on aesthetically. The way that the director shoots San Francisco, the way that it scores the sequences, it's just so good. I was really, at this point, I mean, I'm still trying to close the book on 2019. I have about maybe 20 movies I haven't seen that I want to see. This was one. Last Black Man in San Francisco was one of the most daunting ones, because it had gotten so much critical acclaim, and I didn't want to watch it when I was tired. I wanted to watch it in one sitting and all that. So it finally happened, and I'm just very happy. Definitely recommend it. You know, you can stop halfway through the Friday the 13th documentary, take a break, watch.
Just set aside a whole Saturday.
Yes, and then when it's done, you can come back to Corey Feldman being an asshole. And,
Excellent.
Yeah, definitely worth watching.
All right, so that was episode 104. That was Blue Velvet. What's next?
Let's see, what's next? We have our bonus Street Fighter episode with the guys from We Watch a Thing. That's on the 20th. And then April 1st, this is all you, Alex. No Holds Barred. I know it has Hulk Hogan. We're doing a commentary on it.
I mean, if you want to watch that movie twice, because you usually have to prep yourself, right? You have to watch a movie.
I mean, if we're doing a commentary, I'm watching it ahead of time, so I'm not completely lost.
I'm not going to do that to you. We'll just do a traditional episode on it.
I mean, it's okay. Either way, I'll have a good time.
But yes, Hulk Hogan and Tiny Lister, also known as Zeus in that movie, also known as Debo in Friday, and also the prisoner in The Dark Knight that does the right thing, taking the detonator.
Now I know who you're talking about.
Throwing it overboard. Yeah. It's something else.
Okay, that's our WrestleMania
Bonus episode. Yes, sir.
Bonus episode. And then we have 105 is Hangover 3. And 106 is Boyhood. And then we're launched into the summer of Winona.
I forgot we're doing Boyhood. Saturday. That's going to have to be a weekend movie. You got to have the whole day set aside. Hangover 3, where I lose all credibility.
It's been a while since we've referenced the Hangover franchise, but I think that there was one of the years where we just kept going back at it.
Yeah. Who knows? It may be shit at this point. I haven't watched it in several years. I just remember enjoying it when I saw it.
It's either going to get Elizabethtown or Rise of Skywalker. One of the two.
All right. Perfect. And we got a stacked lineup coming y'all's way. But for now, that's going to do it for the Contrarians, where we're right and you're wrong, and we will catch you next time.